Media violence, video game violence. What do you think, folks? Is it part of the problem? Or should the focus rightfully be on guns and mental health care alone? Well, I kind of think we should be looking at media violence as well. Charles Goldman disagrees. In the match of the century, Charles and I square off today on the Fallon Forum, and we'll let my bike, be the decidificator as to whether or not Charles's arguments prevail or mine. We'll be back in a minute to kick it off.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Ed Fallon here, folks. Gateway Market and Cafe is your locally owned source for specialty groceries. Enjoy chef-crafted, prepared foods, artisan baked goods, organic produce, specialty cheeses, and hand-selected wines and craft beer. Visit the lively cafe for breakfast, lunch, or dinner 7 days a week. Gateway Market is centrally located on the corner of Martin Luther King Jr. Parkway and Woodland Ave. Stop by or visit www.gatewaymarket.com for more details. That's Gateway Market, folks. Good food, great community.
This moment of silence brought to you by Tally's Restaurant Bar and Catering, home of Des Moines' premier rooftop dining experience. Located in the heart of Beaverdale, Tally's offers speedy and affordable rooftop lunch, catering for events both large and small, innovative cuisine, as well as vegetarian and gluten-free menus. Come to Tally's for live music, dry-aged steaks, Sunday brunch, and all-you-can-eat ribs every Monday night. Tally's Restaurant Bar and Catering at 2712 Beaver Avenue. Call 279-2067. That's 279-2067.
On March 28th, Equal Justice After Hours is Iowa Legal Aid's annual fundraiser that helps provide access to justice for low-income Iowans. The event includes a reception and program at the Temple for the Performing Arts in Des Moines. It also includes remarks by Georgetown University law professor Peter Edelman and the induction of Robert Oberbilling into the Iowa Legal Aid Hall of Fame. Tickets start at $50 and sponsorship opportunities are available. Contact Terry Bennett at tbennett@iowalaw.org. That's tbennett@iowalaw.org.
Times are tough, and most people are just trying to make their cars last a little bit longer. That's why you should know about Sargent's Garage in Des Moines. You can trust Sargent's to make the right diagnosis and give you a fair price. Whether it's a routine oil change or a major repair, Sargent's always does outstanding work. So don't give up on that old car just yet. Call Sargent's Garage at 246-8149. That's 246-8149 for Sargent's Garage. I'm a burrito.
I'm a fighting burrito, full of fresh ingredients prepared before your very eyes.
I don't have eyes.
I have over 28 options and 268 million combinations, including Rizo for vegetarians.
I can take my meat off and call myself vegetarian.
Put that back on. The Fighting Burrito is locally owned.
I'm owned by some big corporation somewhere. Say, you want to go on a date?
No thanks. I'm seeing a quesadilla.
The Fighting Burrito online, fightingburrito.com. Join the fight.
I love driving to Newton to see the races.
Me too, but I only have to drive across town.
You live in Newton?
Yep, Newton's got small town charm and it's close to Des Moines. I love the safe, friendly neighborhoods and family-owned businesses. And Newton's wind energy industry is really taking off.
How'd you find your home?
Dan Kelly with First Choice Realty. And Dan helped me find my office too.
Next time, instead of just speeding by, I'll stop in and check out Newton.
Why don't you check out Newton? Call Dan Kelly at 641-521-9260 or Dan Kelly at mchsi.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
All right, I instead of opening with Brother Trucker, maybe we should have opened with a theme from Rocky. I don't know. Charles Goldman in the studio with me, and unlike most of our joint appearances, we don't really agree entirely. Now, we haven't really talked about this in great detail, so maybe as we start going through it a bit, you'll come around to what my way of thinking.
Well, I think just to put some context in, I believe that the last time I was on, we were talking about gun regulation.
Right.
And my statement at the very end of the show was that if we're going to have to sacrifice the children of Newtown on the altar of anything, I'd rather sacrifice them on the altar of the First Amendment than the Second, which, of course, the argument in the United States is more about the Second than the First.
Right, that led into the comment about regulating violence in the media.
Correct.
And I think something should be done. I think it should be on the table. I was disappointed that Obama only focused on guns. I'm disappointed that a lot of people are focusing on either only guns and or only mental health issues. I think this ought to be part of the conversation. And we're gonna talk about this. We'll debate this today.
Okay.
Later in the program, Heather Ryan's going to join us for her usual Ryan's Rants. We're also going to hear from Deb Bunka about an event helping the first fund drive that KHOI 89.1 FM. That's the new community-owned station in Ames. The first fund drive they put together. But to moderate our discussion,
so I guess they're going to be giving DVDs of Downton Abbey or whatever it is, Downton Abbey Away or something.
Downton Abbey?
Yes.
Yeah. When I first heard that, I didn't know what that was. I assumed a monastery had moved to downtown Des Moines. Right. Well,
or else I guess they'll give you coupons to the gun show at, I love this, the gun show this weekend.
Where?
At Adventureland.
Oh.
They have the gun show at the kids' amusement park.
How predictable.
Yes.
Anyway. Well, to moderate our discussion in case we get out of hand, and again, to kind of, offer the final decision as to whether or not, your arguments or mine prevail, I've invited my Bike, who is an avid video watcher, by the way. You wouldn't know that, but Bike, you ready to weigh in on this?
What does he watch? Breaking Away, the director's cut?
What do you watch, Bike?
I watch all kinds of movies. I like independent films. I like Quentin Tarantino most of the time.
Quentin Tarantino.
Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, talk about gratuitous violence.
All right, well,
Yes.
we're going to have to take a long ride this weekend. I'm going to have to talk with you a bit. But anyway, you can help us keep on target here, on track here. I like the chair behind you, by the way.
It's red.
Yeah, it's bright orange. But anyway, it's not exactly ergonomically designed for a bike, but hopefully you'll make it work.
I think I'm quite comfortable.
All right, good. As long as you're comfortable. As long as my guest is comfortable. Folks, if you want to call and join the conversation, even if it's out of your comfort zone, 244-0077 or toll free 855-244-0077. And again, Charles kicked off the conversation posing the question about First Amendment versus Second Amendment. My thought is I think we can still have both and have the right to responsible gun ownership and the right to responsible use of the media and other forms of communication that right now I think, and many other people think, are way out of hand and out of line in terms of how much violence they depict. I think there is an area, there's a gray area where we've got to say, okay, at some point, people have gone too far. I mean, the FCC currently says that regarding the airways. If you drop one of the 7 words that George Carlin didn't like, or warned against, let's put it that way. I think he probably liked those words. If you drop one of those 7 words, you get a $10,000 fine. So we make these decisions all the time as to what is and isn't appropriate. Why not make a decision about what is and is not appropriate when it comes to media violence?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing that we should say is that there are other, first world countries which also regulate their media. And it's interesting that in the United States, the main concern in regulation of, let's say, broadcast media is sex, which of course is completely duplicitous because it's all about sex on TV, but it can't ever be really straightforward in any way. It has to be all innuendo, but any nudity, of course, is out of bounds, unlike in Europe where they could care less.
Well, yeah, in Europe back in the 1980s when I was traveling in Europe, there was public nudity in the English Gardens in Munich.
Yeah, no, I mean, and there are places. Well, there are places like in San Francisco. There's public nudity also. Of course, that's a big fight. But the point is that in Europe, their main concern, because I actually did pull the information about regulation of TV in the UK. If you look at their codes, there's 3 lines about sex and nudity. There's an entire page about violence, and they have a much greater concern in Europe about violence on TV than we do in the United States. In the United States, we're much more concerned about, again, nudity.
So you're helping to make my case?
No.
No? Well, it sounds like a good argument in favor of my view.
In fact, in the UK codes, they admit that there's no way of depicting violence, whether it's contextualized or sanitized, where you don't actually see the act, but it's suggested, that has ever been proven not to be harmful to some people. So, I mean, I know that's going to be your main point, which is that there are enough studies saying, yes, seeing violence may lead some people to be violent. But the question is, what would be the consequence of trying to censor broadcast media, the internet, and other ways in which, information is delivered to people? At what cost to get what? I mean, we talked about this last time. To some degree, the discussion on guns is always this overwrought discussion based on mass killings, which are rare. There is nothing
rare compared to what? I mean,
they're
not rare
rare
compared to history. I mean, compared to history, it's just horrible. You never saw this sort of thing happening years ago. And you could argue that maybe, and I would agree, partly it's because the weapons that we have now are much more deadly than what we had years ago. But I would argue we've become a more violent society.
No, actually, violent crime is down in our society. It's that signature events like this are more frequent. Murder rates are down pretty much everywhere in the United States for various reasons. It's not all just about guns.
Right.
It's about demographics. It's about economics.
It's about law enforcement.
Right. So, I'm very leery of concentrating on this arena. And video games, of course, is another way in which violence is brought into people's homes. I agree with you. I mean, I think our love affair with violence is disgraceful. But I think the consequence of trying to censor it would be even much more injurious to the free exchange of ideas.
But do you think that violence in movies and video games has an effect on people's minds and beliefs and activities to the extent that it could conceivably cause somebody to go out and commit one of these horrific shootings?
I think most people who commit mass murders, or I should say the white males that almost invariably commit the mass murders, it's a mental illness issue. And
not at all fueled by what they see on TV or in a video game.
There may be some influence. And, the studies that try to parse out how much violence someone's exposed to are usually based on self-report. So we don't really know how much violence those people are really being exposed to. And how do you take out other factors? I mean, if someone, kills their wife in a drunken rage, is that because they were drunk or because they spent most of their, time watching American TV and the various depictions of violence you can get from one end of prime time to another, including football? Is football a violence that you'd want to get rid of?
No, because it's a sport. It's not. I mean, you're not. It's not gratuitous violence. It's a violence.
Of course, it's gratuitous. It's a game.
But there's violence.
People are paralyzed. People are killed. High school students die.
Cross-country runners fall over and drop dead.
Not at the same rate as a football player does.
No, but I mean, there's going to be some level of violence, whether you perpetrate it on yourself or on others in every sport. Some worse than others. I mean, I'm not a fan of boxing, but again, I wouldn't say that's something we need to be looking at in the same way we analyze media violence.
I don't see how that's any different. I mean, watching two people pummel each other with their fists. How is it any different than watching somebody shoot somebody on a police show on TV?
Let me ask you about this post that Michael Gillespie put up recently. It shows Einstein. Einstein's kind of irrelevant to the quote. It's help me understand the logic of this. Watching 2 hours of violence in a movie has no influence on our behavior, but a 30-second Super Bowl ad is worth $3.8 million because it will make us run out and buy a product. I mean, how do you respond to that?
No, I'm not denying that if you're immersed in violence, that there are going to be some people that there, as the British Code says, there's no proof that there's any way of presenting violence in which you may not, in some cases, harm people psychologically and make them more violent. But to single it out as a cause, and then the draconian mechanism you would have to determine what's violence that's okay and what's violence that's not. I mean, I have a huge problem with, to me, football is about militarism. It's just an update of the Colosseum in Rome without the animals.
And with a lot less casualties.
True. But nevertheless, I mean, they would say that was a spectator sport. I don't see that you can say the violence of football is okay, but the violence of Walker, Texas Ranger is not. That's what you'd have to do. You'd have to parse these very fine distinctions. And the point I made earlier was that we talk about contextualized violence. I, for instance, despise Tarantino. I'm so sick of Tarantino. I'm so sick of seeing under the ruse of art that he gets away with what he does. On the other hand, it wasn't so long ago that Ginsberg writes a poem that was considered pornographic, Howl, that ends up in a censorship trial in San Francisco, because at that time the idea of being a homosexual man writing about love and other things sexual was also outside the community standard. So this is what happens. I think if you do that, you're going to start seeing other things being able to be censored.
But we do that all the time in our society. We decide what is right and what is wrong. And there are a lot of ways in which I think government should never be involved in determining what's right and wrong. I mean, I've got enough libertarian in me that I'm not convinced that helmet laws or even seatbelt laws make sense. That's a personal decision. But we make decisions all the time about things that affect the broader community. And I think, this is an area where we ought to be weighing in, and that, again, it could get out of hand. It could conceivably lead to a government appointed or elected, however you want to do it, some board going too far, being too heavy-handed. But gosh, what's happening right now is going too far. We got to do something. And I think not to look at the impact. I do want to quote you from an ISU study here, if I can. But we got phone lines open. Actually, just one more open. So let's take a couple calls.
Sounds good.
244-0077. Call in and tell Charles how wrong he is, or you can call in and tell me how wrong I am. At any rate, your opinion on media violence and violence in video games and what to do about it. Let's go to line one. This is Michael from Maxwell. Hello, Michael.
Hey, Ed. How you doing?
Good.
So glad to hear your conversation today. I'm really just delighted to find that Dr. Goldman and I share an appreciation of Allen Ginsberg's poetry. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the first line of Howl, isn't it?
That's right.
I enjoy poetry. I don't write it, but I enjoy it. And I've always appreciated that particular line. And I think today we see a lot of great minds, a lot of good minds destroyed by media violence. And that's not the only damage that media violence does. There's a lot of research about this over the years, decades of research about the causative effect of media violence in society, and particularly on children. And also, there's a lot of what some people want to call anecdotal evidence. We know that the Sandy Hook shooter, Adam Lanza, was habituated to violent first-person shooter video games. Or we know that Michael Carneal, the Heath High School shooter, was addicted to first-person shooter video games. We know that the Columbine killers, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, both of them reacted very angrily when their parents attempted to restrict their use of violent video games. So there's just a tremendous amount of evidence that has to do directly with the kinds of societal violence that violent media product is associated with, and the research is conclusive.
What do you think of that, Charles? The research is conclusive. I'm not even sure I'd go that far, but I do think it's pretty strong.
Well, I think, first of all, as was said, the use of 4 or 5 mass murderers as evidence simply is an anecdote. Yes, in their case, it may have had that influence. I'm really not going to deny. It's hard for me to imagine, with the amount of violence that we're immersed in our culture, that it doesn't have an effect on people. I'm certainly willing to say that that's likely. An effect
to the point where we can expect these kind of mass shootings to occur?
Well, but the question is, see, here again, it's really interesting. I was just thinking as our caller was talking, to some degree, we want no risk in our culture. We want no risk. So we're concerned about media violence because of the exceptional, horrible events that occur, these mass murders. And yet we're perfectly willing to sit at home and watch people sit at consoles outside of D.C. blowing up civilians in other countries. In fact, we sometimes see those videos, the targeting videos on TV.
You're talking about drones.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I just don't totally understand. We want to eliminate any domestic risk, or we think we can eliminate domestic risk, which I don't think we can do by controlling media violence. And yet, when violence is used in seemingly a righteous way, we're perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, and I would argue, too, that media violence, again, especially video game violence, desensitizes one to the point where it's not uncomfortable to sit inside a military base somewhere, push buttons that cause a drone to wipe out an entire village in Afghanistan somewhere.
Well, and it's not just a drone issue. I mean, there was a phenomenal article about 2-3 years ago about how the military, studied, and they found that even in Vietnam, only about a third of the troops ever fired their weapons at the enemy, even in situations where there was, intimate contact.
Hand to hand.
Right, and what they did was, in fact, just use video games to do just that. They're using video games in basic training to correctly desensitize people so that they now get 80 to 90% of the troops firing in the direction of the enemy. I'm not denying that. But my question is, what would be the cost of trying to do that? And then my flip side of that question would be, what about in the 1960s when at 6 o'clock at night, you would sit down to your news show and they brought dead bodies from Vietnam and the My Lai massacre and everything into your home. And those images were the images that eventually ended a horrible war. A stupid war.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I don't think you can do that with censorship.
I got to run to a break, Michael, but I'll give you one more minute here to respond to that, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, well, the problem is that media violence has a number of different kinds of effects, and it doesn't just affect children. It's not just about video games. There have been numerous studies that have shown that one insidious and potent effect of media violence is to desensitize all of us to real-life violence. All of us, anybody who watches it. And this has a chilling effect, across society. The violence causes something called mean world syndrome, where people think the world is a much more dangerous place than it is. Talk about a chilling effect.
Yeah,
that's at least equal to any kind of the effect of any kind of censorship. And by the way, tobacco advertising, is now no longer permitted on television and in radio, simply because it was perceived to be a public health hazard.
Right.
And media violence is a similar public health hazard. I think government's going to deal with this eventually. All of the naysayers, notwithstanding.
Well, Michael, thank you for the call. I appreciate you taking the time to join us. I'm going to have to give Charles the last word here, or he might jump across the table at me.
Thanks, Ed.
No, I think Michael makes a very articulate point about the issue of desensitization. But I do think that then real-world images of violence or depictions of violence become necessary to some degree to shake people back. It's really easy to talk about war when you're sitting at home in your lounger watching your big screen TV, or sitting in a football stadium singing "God Bless America" and doing all you can. I think if people understood the actualities of war in real time or in certain cultural depictions, that has an effect against that. And I'm very leery of sanitizing war because it's violent.
I agree, and I think I would make a distinction between how we present real war to people and what we do.
But then you're not really doing. But then you're injecting a huge political consideration and your political views as to what's appropriate violence.
Well, let's continue the conversation when we come back, folks. Dr. Charles Goldman and I discussing media violence in video games. You're welcome to join the conversation at 244-0077. We'll go back to our phone lines when we return. I do want to thank the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club, also Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility for sponsoring the Fallon Forum. And I want to thank Gateway Market for sponsoring this segment of our show. Gateway Market at 20th and Woodland. It's our neighborhood grocery store, but not just serving the Sherman Hill neighborhood. It's a grocery store for folks across the metro. And judging by the clientele, they are drawing from far and wide because I think people appreciate the importance of keeping their money local. And they also appreciate the wide range of local products available at Gateway Market. Also a great place for breakfast, lunch, or supper. Charles and I had supper there the other night. And
yes,
you are a gluten-free diner.
That's correct. I actually had to go to the deli counter, but it was excellent.
It was pretty good. Yeah. I was impressed with how much you were smiling while you were eating. Anyway, thanks Gateway Market for being a sponsor of the show, folks. We'll be back in a minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
The dawn of a new era begins.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day uno one of webcast1live.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait. Howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
I can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Folks, the Max Wellman Trio performing last night at Java Joe's. Fantastic concert. Really good. And
Iris DeMent is back in town again?
She is.
Because I thought they were both just here a couple weeks ago, weren't they?
Iris DeMent
and I thought they both were and Max
Greg,
Wellman.
Well, Max Wellman lives here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but Iris DeMent I thought was just here like a month ago.
She might have been.
Yeah.
But, you know, she's married to Greg Brown, so.
Oh, is that right?
She ought to be. Yeah, so Max has got a couple concerts coming up in March. I'll tell you more about those as the information becomes available. Charles Goldman and myself talking about violence in the media. You are welcome to join us at 244-0077. Let me share a couple.
Wait, I have a question for you before you share a couple of the email comments. Now, Michael talked about the fact you have to protect the children. I think everyone's in agreement with that, and the media is regulated to the degree that there are certain hours before which the shows that would be considered hyper-violent can be shown. Mm-hmm. So what would you do with, Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner?
Or for that matter, the icon of my youth, the Three Stooges.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's I think we ought to cast as generous a net as possible in terms of defining what is acceptable. And I think, under no standard that would be acceptable to me, would you ban Wile E. Coyote or the Three Stooges? And even, there's plenty of movies that have violent scenes and even significant elements of violence. I mean, The Lord of the Rings. Okay, the a couple of the battles with orcs got way too long. And you know, I got really tired of seeing orc heads roll all on the ground.
Right.
But you know, I wouldn't regulate that. But you know, the stuff that where it's just horrific, gratuitous violence, and the video games that just kind of glorify this. Let me share this with you, Charles. Okay.
Okay.
This is a study by there were a couple Iowa State University researchers involved. This is from the New York Times this week. The title of the article by Benedict Carey is "Shooting in the Dark," and he kind of presents both sides of the story. You would find some evidence in here for your argument, but the one line is a burst of new research has begun to clarify what can and cannot be said about the effects of violent gaming. So this is good. We're getting more empirical evidence, and he says it is not at all clear whether over longer periods such a habit, meaning video games, increases the likelihood that a person will commit a violent crime. But, and this is one of the pieces of research done by Iowa State University. Christopher Bartlett, a psychologist at ISU, led a research team of 47 undergraduates. They tested whether the students would behave more aggressively by having them dole out, interesting, don't laugh yet, by doling out hot sauce to a fellow student who, they were told, did not like spicy food, but had to swallow the sauce. Interesting way to do this. Those who had been engaged in the video game Mortal Kombat, which they can't even spell correctly, I guess, Kombat, looks like wombat with a K. Those who engaged in Mortal Kombat were more aggressive across the board. They gave their fellow students significantly bigger portions of the hot sauce.
Okay, but the problem is that, like much sociologic research, people come into it with, to some degree, of predetermination. There's something else that happens when people are sitting around, you know, masturbating on the computer, playing video games. They're socially isolated. So it's not just that they're playing violent video games. How do we know that the causative factor isn't that these are socially isolated people? I mean, you and I have a busy life, but we have a lot of contact with other people. But the people who spend that much time playing, would you waste your day playing a video game? When was the last time you played a video game?
It's been a while, and I have had to peel my bike away from video games. It's time to go for a ride, or I got to get to the show. And why are you sitting in front of that computer playing Mortal Kombat?
I really do think that it's easy to say it's the video game, and Michael's right. Michael's right that a loss of empathy is the reason why it makes it easier to be violent to other human beings. But the loss of empathy is partly the social isolation of computers. Secondly, it's that you took a huge number of people, took them out of cities, put them in their little houses all by themselves, living with the nuclear family, with very decreasing amount of social contact except for work.
I agree.
You know, and then the third thing is talking about a climate of fear. That's the definition of the 2000s. That's Fox News.
Yeah.
The endless war on terror. He's absolutely right. We live constantly in fear, conjured up fear.
Let's go to our phone lines, folks. 244-0077. Match of the century here. Charles Goldman and I debating media violence. Okay, maybe not the match of the century. But let's go to Leonard Tinker on line one. Hello, Leonard.
It's all horse apples.
Horse apples.
And we can verify that empirically.
What's that?
If violent video games were responsible for a high violence rate in the society, you would expect Europe, Japan, and Canada to have violent rates somewhat comparable to that in the United States. They don't. But they see the same video games that our kids see.
That's correct.
So
This crap about video games is a red herring that's being thrown up by morons like Wayne LaPierre, who has the IQ of a houseplant and is milking idiots to support his lavish lifestyle.
Wait,
tell us what you really think.
It sounds like you have some video games in the house.
What we need to do is we need to cut the availability of high-capacity weaponry that allow idiots to go into grade schools in Newtown, Connecticut and kill 26 people in roughly the same amount of time it takes.
What do you say to the fact that most of those people, most of those killers, again, as Charles pointed out, tend to be white young males. Most of them have spent a lot of time in playing video games, even find some inspiration
then why
to it.
aren't they doing it in Canada, Japan, and Europe?
I think it's the combination of the isolation we've created by design in our society, the availability of guns, the lack of mental health counseling.
Maybe the the kids in Japan and in Europe. I mean, God knows the Germans have an innate propensity for violence. We know that.
I'm just you can't postulate that based on two world wars. Come on.
Lear said once all the Germans were warlike and mean, but that couldn't happen again. We taught them a lesson in 1918, and they've hardly troubled us since then.
Well, Charles, I mean,
what I'm getting at is their kids are watching the same video games that our kids are, and maybe they have repressed violence. But the bottom line is they don't have access to AR-15 semi-automatic assault rifles. They can't get them. Therefore, they don't go into schools or wherever, or movie theaters in Aurora, Colorado, or wherever, and start shooting up the place. The NRA is not going to have, they're never going to come to grips with this, but what we really need to do is convince Chuck Grassley that he needs to quit being a tool of the Tea Party and develop a backbone.
Well, Leonard,
if he continues down the road that he's going right now, the next time he runs for re-election, if he runs for re-election, he may carry the 4th district, but he's not likely to carry the rest of the state if they see him as a foil for the Tea Party.
Well, I think Leonard's point is interesting because it's a little off the topic about the issue of the violence in the media, but something we alluded to last time, which is that the NRA is not representative of its membership. The membership of the NRA feels that enhanced background checks and the assault rifle ban overwhelmingly would be fine with them. The NRA is nothing but a tool of the arms manufacturers in the United States, who 10 of the 15 of the arms manufacturers in the United States make huge amounts of money out of promotion of military-style weapons to American citizens.
Well, apparently they're going to make a bunch of money selling it to the federal government as well.
I'm sorry.
Do you remember
that was
Kane
bullets.
Robinson?
What?
Do you remember Kane Robinson?
Very well.
Okay. He was making $1 million a year working for the NRA. Just for the record, he was not making that kind of money as assistant chief of police in Des Moines.
Leonard, thanks for the call.
It's a cash cow for the NRA management.
I hear you. And media violence is a cash cow for Hollywood.
Yeah, and there's an excellent...
Thank you for the call, Leonard.
Excellent article by Tom Dickinson that's available online about the NRA and Wayne LaPierre and the issue of, are they representing the members or are they simply representing the members of the board who are of the munitions companies? And it's very clear that they represent the munitions companies.
All right.
And they punished, actually, Smith & Wesson when they almost came into an agreement with the government about making guns safer, making them more identifiable.
And again, you're not going to get any argument from me against doing something to regulate.
Sure, I understand that.
Regulate guns, and I think Obama has made a modest and very reasonable proposal. And I think the folks that argue that any efforts to change gun laws is an assault on the Second Amendment, I think that's ridiculous. But I would also say that I think taking off the table a discussion about how we better manage violence in the media, suggesting that somehow impacts our protections under the First Amendment, I don't concur with that either. But let's go to another call, Charles.
Sure.
All right, 244-0077. Frank from Des Moines.
Goldman.
Frank, how you doing?
My favorite co-host.
Well, ever since Ed moved to noon, it's harder and harder for me to get freed up.
Yeah, well, listen, I was actually listening to you guys and surprised I hadn't thrown the phone. You guys were actually making some sense there until you started going down that rabbit trail of guns. Hey, listen, Hitler, Genghis Khan and the Roman Catholic Church slaughtered more people on an unprecedented scale than probably most of the murders in the 20th, 21st century. And they didn't have movies, radio, TV, video games, and porn to inspire them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but they had other types of inspiration.
Sure.
But,
So, Charles, I've ran this over any number of people's heads, and they all seem to just blow it off like water off a duck's back, but I'm going to guess you're not.
No, I mean...
No, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I haven't made the point yet. You're a doctor,
mm-hmm.
okay?
Yes.
Would any doctor worth his salt treat cancer as a topical wound?
No.
Okay. This is the problem with violence in our society. We've got all kinds of symptoms of the violence. We've got the guns. We've got the violence in videos, porn. We've got gang violence in the rap music. We've got all kinds of cultural things that is a symptom of something. And violence is the symptom that keeps popping up like a sore, a topical sore on your arm. Okay, we've got to get to the point to kill the cancer. We got to get to the point to kill what is inspiring violence in men's hearts. So you can talk about guns all day long. You can talk about movies. You can talk about whatever all day long. When are you going to get to the symptom of what's creating the desire for violence, for men to do violence to one another?
Well, what would you think that is, Frank?
Oh, I don't even know if I want to know the answer, Frank.
Well, you know, obviously, that sin and rebellion is the symptom. That's the disease. You know,
and we're all going to tell. We all have a different. I mean, Charles is cult. I mean, I don't know if you're
okay, but now, Frank, because you started out by saying that nationalism and religion have killed more people than mass murderers in the United States. Obviously, true. So, where does religion fit in then?
Well, we got to separate true faith from a organization that was hijacked by paganism.
Okay.
There's a father of each.
So I'm presuming, Frank, they're not calling you to weigh in on the next pope.
Probably not. If the position wasn't filled, it probably wouldn't hurt my feelings.
Frank, I got to run to a break, and you'll be delighted to know that Heather Ryan will be in the studio with us shortly.
Well, okay, are you going to leave me on?
I'll leave you on.
Okay.
All right, Frank, thanks for calling.
All right, Frank, we'll get back to you then.
Yeah. I want to thank Erin Murphy with Family Tree for helping to sponsor this segment of our show. Erin Murphy is a massage therapist and also a practitioner of yoga who works at Family Tree. Family Tree is on Ingersoll Ave, just up the street from Community CPA. And again, if you aren't aware of the value of massage, you haven't experienced one according to the way they deliver this service at Family Tree. Again, give Erin Murphy a shout. Again, they're right there at 3900 block, actually 3900 Ingersoll Ave. Family Tree. Anyway, I'll be back in a few minutes, folks. Charles will stick around with us, and Heather Ryan will be joining us here on the Fallon Forum.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Community CPA is the 15th largest CPA firm in Iowa, providing audit, tax, and accounting services. Community CPA specializes in international tax treaty and double taxation avoidance among countries and states. 9 dedicated, experienced, hardworking staff are the company's foundation, and their compassion towards every client is the secret behind Community CPA's success. At Community CPA, you can expect quality service year-round. Call 288-3188. Community CPA, 3816 Ingersoll. Experience the difference.
Since 1994, Sid's Catering has graced Des Moines area events with quality service and rave reviews. Owner Sid Cohn's culinary career began with a Northeast Iowa vacation home for international clientele. Sid earned a Bachelor of Science in Hotel Restaurant Management and was the assistant clubhouse manager at Des Moines Golf and Country Club. Sid has a passion for fresh, local products and offers a wide range of options, including vegan, gluten-free, and ethnic. Mention the Fallon Forum when you book your breakfast or lunch event and get 10% off. Contact Sid's Catering at 208-2091. That's Sid's Catering at 208-2091.
This is Dr. Holding, the Story County Veterinary Clinic. For 15 years, we have been spaying and neutering feral cat groups at affordable prices. Wild cats destroy game birds and songbirds. A single female cat can produce over 4,000 kittens in 7 years. The shelters are full, so unwanted kittens will be put to sleep. Your cats will stay home and stay healthy. Call us for all your dog and cat needs at the Story County Veterinary Clinic between Ames and Nevada on Highway 30, 1 mile east of Interstate 35, 515-232-8766.
It's time to think about upgrading the efficiency of your furnace and air conditioner. Leonard Tinker Heating and Cooling has provided honest, competent service for over 20 years. Whether it's your home or business, for repair work or to install a more energy-efficient furnace or air conditioner, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422. That's 263-0422. For honest, competent heating and cooling service, call Leonard Tinker at 263-0422. Nestled in the heart of downtown, Ritual Cafe is one of Des Moines' most unique places, offering a wide variety of coffee and tea. Ritual Cafe also serves the only all-vegetarian menu in town. And Ritual Cafe is a cultural hub for artists and musicians, with a performance stage hosting local, national, and international talent. Make Ritual Cafe a part of your daily ritual. On 13th Street between Locust and Grand in downtown Des Moines. And check out ritualcafe.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Folks, welcome back to the conversation here. We've been talking about media violence. Quick reminder, Bradshaw will be with you at 1:30, and then quick look ahead next week. Still nailing down the conversation, but at least we have a few things scheduled. On Tuesday, Frankie Mink's going to join us. Frankie, of course, Diary of a Recovering Skinhead, and apparently his latest work is also going to be made into a play. We hope to be talking with Jeff Abbas either Monday or Tuesday about an update on the sand fracking issue in Northeast Iowa. And two Iowa State professors, Jan Flora and Cornelia Flora, going to join us to talk about their new book on rural communities. Wednesday, Jeffrey Weiss will be with us. We're going to talk about the CIA hit list, about drones, and about an upcoming event to celebrate peace. And also with Ying Sa on Wednesday. Thursday, State Rep Dan Kelly going to join us on Nikisha Phillips. Heather will be back next Friday. And also an attorney, Corey Ludeman, talking about abusive foreclosure practices. So we got a lot already lined up next week with plenty more coming. And again, who knows what will happen between now and then. Heather, welcome to the show.
Why, thank you. It's my pleasure to be back.
Really?
Should we tell Frank that Heather's here fresh from the Vagina Monologues?
Yes, I hope Frank went to the Vagina Monologues on Valentine's Day at Drake. I couldn't make it this year, but, you know, as you know, I've been a part of it for many years.
Well, from what we understand from Frank, he has his own special collection of material at home.
Frank, do you want? Frank, you still with us, Frank?
He's writing his own monologues.
Pardon?
Frank, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Are you gonna put up with that?
Listen, I like that certain part of the female anatomy as much as the next guy.
You just don't like to mention it. Just don't like to use the V word.
You know, I as I tried to express to you in one of my emails, you know, Chuck Hagel is up there eating every word he's said in the last 10 years. So for you to think that you can come out and just talk coarse and body as nasty as you want.
Unlike Chuck Hagel, first of all, I don't think that anybody's ever going to nominate me to that kind of position. But also, I'm not going to apologize. I may, you know, say, yeah, I said that, and maybe be sorry if you didn't like it, kind of thing. But unlike these other politicians, I'm not going to backtrack and say I should have never said vagina to Frank. I feel so bad.
I was merely trying to suggest to you, if you had any aspirations of being a politician, they will go over everything you've ever said.
Oh, well, you know what? If that's the one thing that they catch me on and say I said the V word on Ed's show, then that's pretty good for, you know, I'm white trash from, you know, no money. Surely they can find something better than that, Frank, really. I mean, I've got much bigger skeletons, so Frank, I'm not worried about that.
Frank, let me put you back on hold because I want to hear from Heather why your take on the violence in the media issue.
Well, I don't have all the answers, I'd like to say first and foremost, but I do think that the media really does play a part in the violence that we experience today in our schools, in you know, the shootings, the mass shootings, the gun violence just in Chicago alone. I mean, media glorifies violence. It's just a fact.
Do you think there should be some regulation over what can and cannot be allowed on video games?
I'm not a big video game fan, period. I mean, at all, because it's a huge waste of time. But then any kind of time you put violence and where you're just shooting people mindlessly, I think there's a real problem there. But it's such a tightrope to walk because where's the limit? You know, once you start telling people what they can and can't do and what they can and can't write into programs, it's such a slippery slope. I don't know the answer. I wish I did, but you're absolutely just glorifying shooting people, and to me, that's just wrong, morally wrong.
Well, I think we talked about it right before you came, which is that the video game itself may simply be a symptom of other problems, which is, as you point out, most people with a brain wouldn't waste that much time of their life in front of a video game.
Yeah.
There's also the issue of when are you exposed to it? I mean, we know from functional MRI studies and other things that the adolescent mind is a volatile place, and that there are centers in the adolescent mind that fire off that after they leave adolescence never fire off again. So clearly, I would agree that violence at certain points in life may be more detrimental than others. But I'll say the societal cost of trying to purge us of this. I mean, Stephen Jay Gould said we're basically cerebrated apes. I mean, you have a big cerebrum on top of centers of emotion, which lead, emotion and violence are connected. And we then, of course, allow certain intoxicants in our society, which even make that problem worse. So I'm a little leery of, I think the video games and a lot of the violence people are exposed to is more symptomatic. Because, if you're a person who's not a violent person, you're not going to sit in front of that stuff.
Right, and I won't. I mean, the best video game around ever is Q*bert. By far, bar none, Q*bert is the best video game ever created. My husband's a big Donkey Kong fan, but I'm thinking Q*bert trumps it any day of the week.
All right, well, some of the responses we're getting electronically here. Another angle on school shootings, writes this one person. I heard that a hefty percentage of the shooters in not just Sandy Hook, but other such atrocities over recent years were diagnosed at early ages with ADHD type disorders and medicated with Ritalin, sometimes as early as from 1 year old, and that Ritalin has the long-term effect on males of increasing violence. How much easier is it to blame guns, not that I'm in any way supportive of them, than to look at how Ritalin is used as a behavior control on children whose parents depend on compliance, so the kids are tolerated at daycare and school so the parents can go to work?
Well, I would just go back to Leonard's statement, which is the use of Ritalin is rife in our society now. The amount of violence in our society has actually been reduced. So I don't see that you can't reason ex priori, which is from the fact that the shooters were on Ritalin. There's millions of people on Ritalin. As to what the purpose of Ritalin is, you're absolutely right. It is a social control drug because ADHD behavior, which may have been evolutionary advantageous in the past when we were hunter-gatherers and the person who was hyper-vigilant and hyper-aware was somebody you wanted on your hunter-gatherer team, won't sit at their desk in school. So you're right. I agree with the issue of why Ritalin is used, but I don't agree that I can link Ritalin to violent behavior in a small number of individuals. That
argument's very skewed, too. They're saying, obviously, that person does not believe in Ritalin. But I can tell you from a personal standpoint, had it not been for Ritalin, my oldest would not be where she is today. If it hadn't been for ADHD medication, she could not focus. She was not able to focus. Now, does that mean she's going to go shoot up somebody? Come on. She has a brain and she can control now what she thinks and thinks about it before it happens. So perhaps that's more symptomatic of, something else other than just a drug that helps a child think before she acts. If anything, it seems to do exactly the opposite of what I would expect a shooter to do, to act before they think. So I can tell you that standpoint was written by someone who obviously has an angst against medication.
And the other problem with Ritalin is that it's used by people who really don't have an indication to use it. It's a study drug. So you've got people taking medications in a setting in which it's not really buffering any issue, and all they get is the amphetamine-like side effect of it. And that could be dangerous. But again, I totally agree with Heather. This is not a drug issue.
I think you'll enjoy this one, Charles. Ron writes, considering that my wife and I are going to see A Good Day to Die Hard, the latest installment of Bruce Willis's Shoot 'em Up, Blow 'em Up Die Hard franchise, I want to say that violence is the fault of the media is nonsense. The trip to the movies is part of our Valentine's observance. Because nothing says love like yippee-ki-yay.
Yippee-ki-yay, whatever it is.
Right. Again, I guess I'm disagreeing with Ron as well. I think what we put in our bodies matters. I mean, we're also picky about what we put in our cars. It's got to be the right kind of fuel. Well, we tend to put junk in our bodies too, but we know that makes a difference, and we should know that what we put in our minds makes a difference as well.
Well, and the big question for Ron is, why would you see a movie that is a replay of the two movies beforehand? You can pretty much predict scene by scene exactly what's going to happen, and you're paying good money to see that again.
It must be the adrenaline rush that comes with the violence.
What's interesting about these violent movies, though, when I was in high school, I actually got in a fist fight. And I thought that when you hit somebody in the face, it goes, psh, And it
Oh, you mean
didn't.
like letters come up like pow?
Like you see, yes, like you see on a movie, like a yippee-yi-yay kind of movie where they're psh, psh, and it doesn't. And so I really think that helps. I think it just helps make the point that I thought what I saw in the movies is real or at least kind of accurate. So wasn't that just kind of pointing to we really believe that this is acceptable behavior and being in a fist fight is going to produce this, or this, and violence can solve these issues. And
I mean, the oddity is, you know, Ed knows my brother's a researcher on the Civil War, but also about the effect of combat on those who fight it. You know, and it's intriguing that people who are enamored of faux violence, as you're pointing out, you know, and I include football in that, tend to be much more willing and less empathetic and much more willing to engage in violence than those who've actually seen it and those who've been in it. You know, so the whole notion of the crazy Vietnam War veteran was actually nonsense. They came out, and they were quite successful, and most of them were not violent. In fact, many of them came back, and just like in, you know, Deer Hunter, they never hunted again because they were sick of it. And you're right, faux violence does not, it desensitizes you, but it doesn't make you tired of violence, unfortunately.
All right, one more card and letter here, folks, as we used to call them before the advent of the internet. This is from Danielle, who writes, Doug Gentile from Iowa State University has a data about violence in video games. The summary is this: exposure to these violent games, and she puts games in quotes, causes children to move quickly to violence to settle disputes. So when they get into a fight, they get into a disagreement, it's got to be a violent resolution. Makes them more aggressive, impacts them in ways that we are now only beginning to understand. And as a teacher, she says for her part, while with the texting and other social media, she finds students less able to write and talk in coherent sentences.
That are not 160 characters.
Or 140, whatever it is. Yeah, I think it's 140, Charles. You need to be tweeting more clearly.
Well, you see, I have an unlimited plan, so I don't worry about it.
Oh, texting, right. Texting is 160. Tweeting is only 140.
Right. Yeah, it's 160 on texting.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's looking at the broader picture, and yeah, I mean, I don't obviously I don't have the answers either. But
no, I think we all accept that children's minds are much more elastic and malleable, and it's much more dangerous when you induce ideas in children than it is in adults who've already ossified in what they believe. You know, so I think everyone agrees that keeping children from violence will have more positive effect than denying adults access to depictions of violence.
We don't let kids drink until they're 21, but haha.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, we think that's important enough that we put some restrictions on when you are allowed to consume alcohol, when you're allowed to drive.
So I guess we should put the video games behind locked glass at Walmart.
We should close all the Walmarts.
Which probably is right next to the...
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe behind Walgreens or something, but the Walmarts, you know.
Yeah. Frank would like to have another comment. Frank,
okay.
We have a little bit of time left.
Frank, don't even think about saying vagina. Don't do it, man.
Well, listen, I just still want to hammer on my original point. This all is symptomatic of a larger problem, and if you guys want to go down chasing the gun rabbit trail, you're just chasing a lost cause, and you're going to just have to get to the point where you're finding out what is creating man's desire to harm other man.
Well, guns help. Guns help men harm men. I'm not sure of your point, but there's a big picture here, and I think we're all acknowledging that there's a big picture
here. A letter
here.
of anthrax would do the same thing. A pipe bomb would do the same thing. Man, if he is determined to, is going to figure out how to do violence.
Well, no,
if you take away one means, he's going to explore another.
I agree with Frank. I mean, I think our violent nature it should be sobering to us, and should point out that we've got a long way to go.
See, that's why I like Charles. Eventually, he agrees with
me. I used to like Charles.
Charles is going to feel dirty now. After he leaves, he's going to take a shower. I'm telling you.
No, I mean, I understand what Frank believes the source of this original sin is, but I mean, even if you look at it in a different way, which is again what I said, this is humans evolve. Humans are evolved from different behavior to the present behaviors, and we need to get past this behavior. Clearly, I think if you were, some alien being, of which I'm sure there are many outside our world, watching our TV and watching our, other media, you would think that the human race probably does deserve extinction, because we're clearly running headlong to it in many ways. And violence is part of it. You know, our unwillingness to sacrifice to, you know, take care of the planet we're on is another symptom of it. We got a long way to go.
Yeah, and I agree with all that. I just don't think we should take anything off the table in terms of what we focus on in terms of trying to come up with a solution. I did say that I'd give my bike the final word in terms of whether or not Charles has the stronger case.
Well, we have to get the game console away from it.
Well, yeah, the bike is no longer in the studio because she is off playing a video game. But Bike, would you like to give us your opinion on the conversation we're having here?
I almost agree more with Frank.
Oh my God,
Bike, not right.
It's a scrap heap for you. I'm going to get myself a new
so
vehicle.
that would be sort of a win for me then, I think.
I think so, but I guess what I'm coming from it is that it's such a deeper question than what you watch on TV, whether or not you can be violent. That's philosophical almost. It's not really, we don't just go out and imitate everything we see on TV. I mean, you have to first be capable of doing it.
So not true. I totally want to be like Honey Boo Boo. I don't know what you're talking about, Bike, but I see what I see on TV and I want to be it.
When I was a kid, I could not. I loved being Mo Howard on the Three Stooges.
I'm not surprised
pretending
by
to
that.
take a hammer to my brother's head.
But now it just wants to be Kim Kardashian.
All right, well, Bike, thank you so much. Again, you are going to the scrap heap, though. That's a done deal. Charles, thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Charles, you'll be solo hosting in a couple weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
I go off to celebrate my birthday.
And I'll be having my brother on. We're going to be talking about what it is to be a drone warrior.
Yeah.
Who now can get a medal for their drone warriorship.
And at the end of the show, you'll say, remember, don't fly drones like my brother.
That's right.
All right, Heather, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
And you'll be back with us next Friday.
Next Friday, same
Great.
time, same place.
All right, folks, I do want to thank all of our sponsors. I want to thank Webcast One Live for providing the studio for this conversation. I want to thank Maddie Arrington, my producer. And I want to thank Fighting Burrito. Fighting Burrito is at 13th and Locust. It's a new restaurant here in the downtown area, the west side of downtown. Custom-made burritos for a very, very affordable price. I think $6.50 a pop. They're filling, and they are delicious. And again, you get to make your own. So check them out, folks. That's Fighting Burrito. Join the fight at 13th and Locust in downtown Des Moines. I'll be back on Monday. Have a great weekend.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.